I was first introduced to, or like aware of Nairy's work in maybe around 2010 when I was finishing graduate school. And I was working on a lot of soft sculpture at the time. And I was making these sort of comfort prostheses because of a variety of things that were going on. And so when I saw Fluffing the Pillows, I was really excited. And I think a lot of maybe an artist development is about permission giving. And so when I saw Fluffing the Pillows, the scale of the work, the fact that it was sort of had a lot of humor, and it related to the materials I was working with, seeing that work really impacted me. So since then, I've paid attention to her work, and so years later, coming into the Nasher to see this version of Misfits, one thing I do as an artist is pair. I like to play with language, and that's another reason that I'm really interested in Nairy's work, is her playful use of material language and how she titles the work in a really sort of a playful or punny or clever way. And so my first response when I came in here by myself and spent time with the work was to make notes. And so I'm going to read some of my sort of improv responses to the work. It's not a poem, but they might do a better job connecting to the work than any sort of like explanation that I could give. So here we go. Put together with putty and gum in improvised fits, they misfit. These are the cast-offs, the lost pairs, the unmatched, the bin of discards, a frame that points. I've lost my bearings, lost bearings. Things situated variously, they're together but at odds. Like child's play, poking and prodding, timid ruffians on edge, looking over and overlooked. A weeping lung, tidy tears, a skin knee or a white rash, trip hazards, wooden clogs, side hugs and slippage, awkward props and plops, organs on display, factory parts in states of waiting, factory parts waiting to play. These are inefficient designs, improper supports. It's vulnerable. Nubby Legos, missing parts, scattered but not random. Staged, strangely territorial, awkwardly assertive, moderately unruly. Art as prop, as art. No thing stands alone. A wooden foot, a wooden tongue. Pegs with colored tips, like code for cultural repair. Androgynous blocks. Cartoon mortar. Neutral, not neutered, and not yet sexy. Torsos or bricks. Unruly. Aerial views. Forced to look aslant and askew. A plan or model for a new world order. Play. Illegible, unruly, refusing sense. A pink punctured torso, playing nice. A model for a sculpture park. Oddly propped slivers of space. A hokey grid. So those are my initial response to Nairy's work, and I love the work. I relate to it in its physicality, in its variety of materials, in its awkward placement, its ill-fitting nature. This work in particular feels like polite misfits. And so I was surprised when I heard the title and came into the space feeling like it might be a little more loud and push back against the architecture a bit more. So I like that it didn't meet my expectations in that way. And I love that Nairy talks about the possibility of failure, that I mean, as a maker, you can't not fail. I mean, we don't need to really call it failure, but it's inevitable that a process has misfires and missteps. And so I love that she embraces that. In the same breath, it's interesting that the work is pretty clean. So when I think of a misfire or a fail in my own work, it's typically like a real blowout. It's a mess. So in so many ways, I think these ideas of permission to fail, defying expectations, it's really what's happening in this installation of Misfits in so many ways, even in maybe not meeting my expectations for the amount of pushback that I expected the work to have in this space. Yeah, I know this is one iteration of a larger body of work, and it's just a pleasure to be in this space. It's a pleasure, and it's a puzzle. So it's not pure pleasure. It's uncomfortable in certain ways, but I think it's really rewarding for anyone who's willing to spend time meeting the work where it's at, kind of in its as-is state. I like that she says, I think it's a Marian Goodman video where she talks about, Nairy talks about like painting the surfaces of some of these cast aluminum works in a way that's very self-conscious. Like she's an adult trying to mimic like the unself-conscious making of a child. And I really see that in the work as well, in this sort of stylized line work on some of these more blocky forms that have illustrative, in my opinion, this sort of illustrative or stylized mark making, which feels like it's trying to be childlike, but is still really careful. So I love that. I can relate to that in myself, like really wanting to have the abandon of a child and relishing in those moments in the studio that are full of wonder and discovery as it relates to materials. That's why I make anything. And also the challenge and the reward of getting familiar with new materials. Nairy talks about interrogating her materials. And she has this way of wanting to upend expectations also for how high or low materials might function, how particular contexts might hold a work. And so in my own work, I'm also very, very DIY. I've always felt like that's sort of it's like I'm confessing to that. And I don't think that's abnormal for artists, but I do feel like, there's never been a desire for virtuosity. And so I admire, I think Nairy's work is clearly crafted in a very skillful way, but I admire and relate to her desire to work with a variety of materials, that she doesn't have she's not devoted to one particular material. In fact, she talks about having open relationships with her materials and being unfaithful to her materials as if they were lovers or family members or friends. And so the way she makes inanimate objects human, and the way she talks about her materials as friends or people, I see a lot in how the work has taken shape. Yeah, there's some stuff.